We're getting some breaking news coming into the situation right now from about Michael Jackson, the king of pop, who's 50 years old. Let's go to Deborah Farrick. She's working the story for us. What are we picking up, Deb?
Well, here's what we can tell you. This is what's being reported by KTLA. Apparently, Michael Jackson suffered cardiac arrest this afternoon. He was rushed to UCLA Medical Center.
At 12:21 this afternoon, the Los Angeles 911 operators took a call in regards to a need for a medical emergency at the 100 block of Candlewood Drive, which is in West Los Angeles. When the paramedics got on scene, they treated the patient and then immediately transported the patient to UCLA.
We just talked to Brian Oxman. He is the family attorney for the Jackson, and he says that according to Randy Jackson, Michael Jackson's brother, Michael Jackson collapsed in his home in West Los Angeles this morning, and they called paramedics. He says that the family is either at UCLA Medical Center or en route to UCLA Medical Center.
CNN sources are now saying, multiple sources, that Michael Jackson is in a coma at UCLA Medical Center, suffered from cardiac arrest, and is now in a coma.
If you look at the aerials that you're showing on air and you see the number of people that have already gathered outside the hospital, if that isn't testament to the star power of Michael Jackson, I don't know what is.
And we're just getting this in right now, and it's very, very sad news, Jim Moret, and to all of our viewers. Both the Los Angeles Times and CBS News are both now reporting that Michael Jackson has died. Now, CNN has not confirmed that, but the LA Times and CBS News are reporting that Michael Jackson, 50 years old, the king of pop, has died. A very, very sad moment.
What was Michael Jackson doing in Los Angeles before he was taken to the hospital? What new information do you have for us?
Well, we do know that he's been in Los Angeles preparing to undertake this major concert event that he was scheduled to perform in London this
I have
coming
to stop you for a second, AJ. CNN can now confirm from the LA coroner that Michael Jackson is dead.
Okay, Tom, when you hear this, what comes to mind, first of all?
Well, first of all, I just can't believe it's been 8 years. It seems like yesterday that the shock of Michael Jackson's death, took over all of us. And, I remember that day very well. I was in a big federal criminal trial in Los Angeles in federal court. I was ending the day walking out of the federal building, and Tanya Zilke, who was a girlfriend of Randy Jackson. Randy's been a friend of mine for years. She came up and said she had heard that Michael Jackson had passed away, and I didn't believe it. Because remember, there were so many rumors, false rumors, exaggerated rumors about, things Michael Jackson supposedly did that turned out not to be true. And my first thought was hoping this was just another one of them. And then I'm walking out of the building, and two armed bailiffs came up to me and said, "Did you hear what happened to Michael Jackson?" And then I realized, oh my God, this might be true. So I called my office, and my voicemail was full. And it was full with journalists and media people from all over the world trying to get in touch with me to get my comment. And then I just was in shock. I just said, oh my God, this has got to be true. And I found out it was true, and I was in shock, I was numb, I was sad, and I just remember thinking, when I could poke through the shock, I remember thinking just, some of the things that Michael had said to me during the trial, because that really was the intense time I spent with him. I think I was meant to defend him in that trial and to be involved in that chapter, and I think that was my main role in his life. After the criminal trial, we worked with him for about 9 months when he was living in the Middle East, but I wasn't as close to him as then. And I remember he looked at me at one point and said, "Tom, life can be very hard," and he had a sad look in his eye, and he was correct.
Was that
life
during
can
the
be
trial?
very hard during the trial, yeah. And I remember thinking, the poor soul, he really was fundamentally kind, gentle, sensitive, decent. He just felt just like everybody always had their hand out trying to get something from him and resenting him if he didn't give it to them, or sometimes he could, sometimes he couldn't. But I just felt very, very sad for one of the greatest geniuses in life, who also happened to be one of the kindest people in life. who died way too soon, and I think was tormented and troubled much more than he ever deserved to be. Because, fame can be difficult for anybody. But to be the most famous person in the world, you can imagine what you're facing in terms of trying to trust people. And there's a side of him that just wanted to have his feet on the ground and be nice and kind and have fun like children do. And I think he was chasing that, that illusion his whole life, feeling he had been denied a real childhood, wanting to be just kind of an ordinary guy at times and just have ordinary fun with people. And, yes, he experienced things that we'll never experience, most of us, because, we don't have the talent and we don't have the world presence he had. But the poor fellow also paid a price for it. And I remember just being very, very sad. Once I got through the denial and the numbness, I felt very sad for a very, very kind, nice, special person who died way too soon.
Yeah, a lot of people, I hear actors say it was almost like they lost a family member. Michael Jackson was like the soundtrack of their life.
Yeah, but I mean, it's, when you listen to his music and watch his dance routines and look at his incredible choreography and, we all enjoyed that. But unfortunately, the poor fellow paid a little bit of a price for it, to say the least. He just, he was forced to rehearse till 3 a.m. as a little boy, get up a few hours later, go to school. He was forced to work in clubs, in Chicago and Detroit, child and weekends. Just wasn't, just able to enjoy spontaneous, innocent fun the way most kids were. And yes, his genius and his talent were perfected in the process. But the poor fellow, I think, just paid a terrible price. I think his emotional health and his physical health did. And, we all enjoyed his music and his artistry, but the poor soul was a human being, and a very sensitive one at that, who paid a price and should not have been dead at 50. But I mean,
and
look, doctors gave him things they shouldn't have given him. They gave Elvis Presley things they shouldn't have given him, Marilyn Monroe. I mean, how many stars can we point out who physicians, gave drugs to for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe to do business, maybe to stay close to the star, maybe they thought it was good advertising, I don't know, but it's certainly wrong. And he should never have been taking this propofol to sleep.
I totally agree. Now, you got into this trial via Mark Garagos was axed. He was fired, right? In
yes.
2003, I guess? Or 2004?
2004. I think it was around April of 2004. Garagos was let go from the team, and I replaced he and Ben Braffen.
So in 2004, about springtime, when were you officially
around
lead
April,
counsel?
I think it was. I forget the exact date, but I took over as lead counsel approximately March, April of 2004, and the trial began January 31st of 2005.
Now, what was your mindset that you were going to do different than the attorney that was fired, Mark Garagos, going into this trial, that you saw that you were going to do different approaching this trial?
Well, I saw a lot of things, as an observer that just didn't ring right to me. Race seemed to be an issue before I got in the case. I understand why Michael and his family thought it was an issue, but I didn't think making race an issue was going to help them in that case, in that community. I noticed that when Garagos went to court, the Nation of Islam was around Michael, and regardless of what you think of the Nation of Islam, I didn't think they belonged in that community in a case like that, because it was primarily a white, to a lesser extent, Latino community, very few African Americans, and Michael was someone who brought all races together. He didn't divide them. Listen to the music you just played to start this show. Look at his family. Look at his kids. Look at his statements through the year. Look how he was loved on every continent, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, you name it, Europe. I felt that with the kind of jury pool you were going to get, making race an issue was a mistake. So one of the first things I did was ask his father and Jermaine to stop calling it illegal lynching on television. I said, it probably is, but, I want to win the case, And I wanted to get the Nation of Islam out and not make black activism as visible a thing. And, I was listened to. I was trusted. The Nation of Islam trusted me. His father did stop making the statements. Jermaine did stop making these statements. I said, look, this is Michael's community. He chose to live in Santa Maria, California, in northern Santa Barbara County, a predominantly blue-collar, mostly white community. And this is where my jury's going to come from, and I'm here to win. That's my job. After we acquit him, he can hang out with anybody he wants or say whatever he wants, but I got to get this job done or he may die in prison. So that was the first thing. I didn't like the lawyers seemed to me to be promoting themselves constantly, big smiles on their face.
In front of the cameras.
Yeah, I found out that this is a blue-collar community, a working-class community. I found out they were arriving in private planes. I felt that was not going to help Michael at all. And I wanted to tone down a lot of the media stuff, a lot of theatrical stuff, and just kind of get down to business and be kind of low-key and hopefully focus on who was important, 13 people, the 12 jurors and the judge. They were more important than the lawyers getting attention. If Garagos had put him on 60 Minutes, which I thought was a terrible mistake. I didn't think Garagos had the right persona for that community. And, Randy was the one who was Randy's the one who was after him. Pardon me?
What do you think 60 Minutes was a problem in your opinion?
Michael looked like he didn't want to be on the show, and he told me later on he didn't want to be on the show. He said his lawyer insisted on it. And he
really?
looked, he looked uncomfortable. He looked, just out of place. It was I was wondering as I watched it, is the lawyer promoting himself or is this good for Michael Jackson? And, of course, Michael was always suspicious that people were trying to profit off of him, as they often were. And Michael was always suspicious that people might want attention because they were around him. And, the only thing to focus on in this case was acquittal. And it was obvious It wasn't going to be easy. They had all these so-called victims, or people saying that they saw him committing lewd acts and things of this sort. So it wasn't going to be easy.
Who also sold their stories, right? Yeah,
a very conservative community with a very high conviction rate in that courthouse. Ugly charges that, I consider worse than being charged with murder. It's being charged with, child molestation. So I had to change the tone. I had to change the atmosphere. I had to make sure we focused on what was important. And, God was with us. We won.
Have you ever tried any kind of sexual wrongdoing accused of in any other case?
Yes,
in other words, have you ever?
In my
number
of them in my career. I've done a lot of sexual assault cases, huh?
So prior to that, you have been with someone who was charged with sexual misconduct.
Yes, I had many trials, and I won a lot of them too. I remember at the beginning of when I got into the Michael Jackson case, I remember your favorite reporter, Diane Diamond, went on TV and said words to the effect that I had not defended sexual assault cases. And it was obvious she wanted me off the case, She had covered me in the Robert Blake case and had been very complimentary of me. And when I first appeared in Santa Maria, Superior Court to represent Michael Jackson, I had no knowledge of her history with, Michael. And I knew nothing about the antagonism and her closeness to Tom Mesereau. And I actually went up to say hello because she had covered the Robert Blake case for Court TV and had been very complimentary of me. And I remember when I said hello, I saw something in the corner of her eye that seemed uncomfortable. And I remember thinking to myself, what's wrong with her? What have I done? And then I realized very quickly what the history was. And
is it true
it was
that
obvious
she
didn't want to compliment me.
I heard she got special treatment. She was able to get into Neverland and do other things that other reporters weren't able to do. like get in Neverland early.
I was told she was the only member of the media that was part of the raid on Neverland in November of 2003 when 70-plus Santa Barbara sheriffs raided Neverland. I was told she was the only member of the media that was allowed to accompany them. So she clearly had a tight relationship with the late Tom Sneddon, the district attorney of Santa Barbara County. And she would make comments on TV. She thought she was clever. She wasn't. You know, my opinion was she was hoping the family would get rid of me. I'm sure she would have her own opinion on this. She may disagree with me.
She was
completely
later
on any of
fired,
the
right?
things. What's that?
She was later fired from TV, right?
I was told she was let go from Court TV. I think it was in the fall of 2005. That's what I was told. I don't know if it's true. I got a call from one of the New York newspapers. I think it was the Daily News called me up and told me she was leaving Court TV and did I have a comment, and I refused to comment.
Oh, okay. Now, witness like Macaulay Culkin, how important was he to your case, if at all?
Enormously important. Remember, you know, they brought in evidence not only that you know, the Arvizo boy was molested. They also brought in evidence that 5 other young men were molested, one of them Macaulay Culkin. So to call Macaulay Culkin as a witness in the beginning of our defense and to have him say, you know, he's my friend, I was never touched improperly, was extremely important. And Macaulay Culkin was under tremendous pressure not to help Michael Jackson, not to testify. I'll tell you something else that's funny. You talk about Diamond. The night before Macaulay Culkin testified, I met with he and his attorney. And his attorney seemed very nervous about the whole thing. Macaulay wasn't nervous at all. He had absolutely no, you know, doubt that he wanted to come in and tell the truth and support his friend Michael. Well, the next morning, you know, I routinely got up at 3 o'clock every day during the trial. I went to bed at 7:30, latest 8. I get up at 3 o'clock, and I would do about 3 hours of work, three and a half hours of work before I went to court. And I was getting dressed that morning, and I turned on the television set. It might have been the Today Show. It could have been Good Morning America, but I think it was the Today Show. And they had Diane Diamond saying her sources tell her that Macaulay Culkin is not going to testify. He's not going to be in the courtroom. And I had just been with him the night before where he told me nothing was going to stop him from being in the courtroom. So, you know, whoever her sources were, they didn't give her the right information.
Wow. So, okay, you have that. Now, the jury is out for how long? About a week or so?
Jury was out for, they deliberated, I think they came back the 8th day. They went out on a Friday, and a week from the following Monday, they had their verdict.
So how many hours is that approximately?
I don't know what the total hours were. As I recall, I don't know what time they went out the first Friday. They went through the entire next week. And then the following Monday, as I recall, it was around noon, we were told they have verdicts on all counts.
Right. And they did ask the judge to read back some things, right? They wanted to see I believe the accuser, Gavin, on the television again. I think that's one of the things.
You know, I had, in my closing argument, I had asked them to look at that tape carefully. You know, the prosecution played the Gavin Arvizo interview with the police in their rebuttal case. And the rebuttal case was a case they put on that followed our defense case. The prosecution goes first in a criminal case, and the defense can rest when they rest, or the defense can put on the defense's own case, which I did. I call lots of witnesses. If the defense puts on their own case, then the prosecution gets to rebut their witnesses. So they put on a short rebuttal, but it included playing the Gavin Arvizo interview with the police. And the press were suggesting that this was terrible for the defense, that it was going to hurt us, it may be a game changer, and, I didn't think it would be at all. And in my closing argument, I told the jury, please look at that carefully and look for the following. And I mentioned a number of things that they should look for when they see that interview to determine if it's credible. And I was later on told by the foreman of the jury that they looked at it carefully and they agreed with everything I said.
Really? So you encouraged the jury, take a look at this,
I did.
judge for yourself.
I did.
So
I
that
said,
was in
look
your
at it
closing.
very carefully and ask yourself these questions. And I had a number of things they should look for. And I was told later on that it helped the defense.
So by the time that you're like in day 4, day 5, are you communicating with Michael? Is he nervous? What's the feeling between the both of you at this time?
Well, I'm getting calls, each day, what do I think? But there was no doubt in my mind that sitting at Neverland and watching TV, he was going to be nervous. I mean, the media wanted to see him convicted. Some of the stations, including Fox TV, were showing photos and film of the jail cell. They said they all but suggested he was going to be in.
I mean,
here's a jury
where he would be. Here's
a jury deliberating, and while they're deliberating, the media, major networks are showing a jail cell where he could end up. I mean, to me, that was very unfair and poor reporting, and certainly wasn't journalism. And thank God the jury didn't even listen to any of it.
This jury wasn't a jury like where they were free to do whatever they wanted in terms of television, right? I mean,
no, they were not.
To a point.
They were absolutely not. Absolutely not.
They
were instructed throughout the trial not to watch any media or any news reports on the trial, not to read them in magazines or newspapers. They were instructed repeatedly.
But they weren't in a hotel or anything like that, right?
They were not sequestered.
OJ.
They were not sequestered like the O.J. Simpson jury, but they were instructed to not look at any media reports on the trial.
What decision goes into that? The judge's decision? Is that prosecution and defense goes into that? Who makes that final decision?
I mean, certainly each side can request the judge do that, but I think in high-profile criminal cases, a judge will regardless. He will always tell jurors each day, before they leave the courtroom, stay away from media reporting, stay away from television, newspapers. If you see a report coming out on the case, don't watch it, don't read it. I mean, they were instructed every day during that 5-month trial to stay away from media.
So, okay, let's bring it to that day, June 13th, 05. So tell me how that day started for you, and then finally you ended up victorious on all counts.
Well, I woke up that morning with a very strong intuitive feeling this is going to be a special day. Something's going to happen. And I had a very strong feeling there was going to be a verdict. And, I've taken a lot of verdicts before and a lot of verdicts since. And you're always nervous whenever you think there's going to be a verdict because you just don't know who those jurors are and what they've been discussing and what the chemistry in the jury room has been. You don't know who's dominated, who hasn't. You just don't know. You just don't know who's affected who. You don't know who wants to go home and end this thing. You just don't know. So there's always uncertainty, and that makes you nervous. But I have to say that I woke up that day. I had a very strong feeling it's going to be a special day, and I was very optimistic about Michael. I just had a feeling they weren't going to get 12 people to convict him. Did I know they would get 12 to acquit? No, I didn't. But I just felt the way we had handled our case, the way we had cross-examined their witnesses, the quality of the witnesses we put on, the way we attacked them in the rebuttal case, and I felt our closing argument was very, very good in terms of directing the jury what to focus on, what to think about. I felt that they had not proven their case, and I felt that we had pretty much proven him to be an innocent man, which we didn't have to do, but I told them in my opening statement, this is not going to be a typical criminal case. I'm going to prove to you this man's innocent. And I felt we had done that. And I just, without really being sure, I had a feeling this is going to be a special day, and it's going to be a good day.
So when you got to the courtroom, how long did you have to wait till the actual verdicts were read? Approximately.
It took a while. We were at lunch, and near the courthouse, and I remember a bailiff came in and said, they have verdicts. You better let Michael know. And
Did
we
you
did
look
that.
at the jury as you came in? Because sometimes people say
This is before. I'm at lunch, so we're told their verdicts. He'd like to read it. I think it was at 1:30. I had to call Michael and tell them to head over to the courthouse. And as I recall, I think the motorcade with traffic got to the courthouse around 1:45, I think, California time.
Right.
And, of course, you know, people all over the world were watching to see what the verdicts were. Times Square, everything stood still in New York. And,
oh, yeah.
you know,
all over.
it just was a – I remember later on looking at some of the footage. It's on my website, the footage of the verdict. And Brian Williams on NBC says, you know, words to the effect, to let you know how big this is, there are 2,200 accredited media, you know, about to watch this verdict. He said that's more than O.J. Simpson and Scott Peterson combined.
Oh, my.
And it was an amazing day. Amazing day. You know, I was at the courthouse, and then, you know, the motorcade was slowly winding its way to the courthouse. And we went in. The courtroom was packed, mostly with media people, but his family as well. And then the jurors came in, and they had very serious looks on their faces. They handed the envelope, the foreman handed the envelope to the judge's clerk, who gave it to the judge to look over the verdict forms. He then gave the forms back to the clerk, and the clerk then read the verdict on each count. 14 not guilty.
A lot of people said it was 10 not guilty, like in the beginning, because I guess, I don't know why. I guess the original indictment was for 10?
The original indictment was 10 felony counts, conspiracy, and the rest of the counts were either child molestation, attempted child molestation, or giving alcohol to a child to prepare the child to be molested. So the grand jury indicted Michael on 10 felony counts. As the case was about to go to the jury, Judge Melville, on his own initiative, on his own motion, as we say it in the profession, said he wanted to give the jurors an option on the last 4 felony counts. And the option was this: if they find Michael Jackson not guilty of any of the last 4 felony counts, which are alcohol-related counts, meaning if they find him not guilty of giving alcohol to a victim, a child, for the purpose of molestation, they then had the option of convicting of a misdemeanor giving alcohol to an underage person. So
it was almost like a bone he threw to the prosecutors, it sounds like.
Absolutely. He was giving them an opportunity to walk out with a conviction, even if it was a misdemeanor conviction. They didn't ask for that instruction. He did it on his own initiative. We didn't ask for it either. So because they acquitted him on all the felony counts, they then had to decide whether he was guilty or not guilty on the 4 lesser included misdemeanor counts. And they said not guilty 14 total times, 10 felonies, 4 misdemeanors.
And it was reported that, you already said that you did not do a press conference like most lawyers in that situation with this high-profile case. You were elected to go back to Neverland with Michael Jackson. Is that true?
I did. I felt that our place was at Neverland with Michael and his family. You know, I was exhausted. I'd had it with the media, to be honest with you. And it took me a while to get over that because I was so upset with the media, the way they tried to spin a conviction. I mean, imagine every day the jury's deliberating. If I turn the TV on, I'm looking at jail cells where he's supposed to end up. I mean, you know, I had a mindset from the day I showed up to appear for the first time that the media is not going to manipulate me, and they're not going to manipulate the jury, and justice is going to be done. And I didn't even like smiling as I walked in and out of the courtroom. I felt that even if I smiled, they would try to blow it up and try to make the local population think I was having fun in a serious trial. You know, I was very, very anti-media during that whole case, and I think I was right. I think it required a lawyer to do that to win.
your hours were very short in terms of you were in bed by what 8-9 the latest, Bert?
I live like
time?
a hermit for six. I lived up there in Santa Maria, which is in Santa Barbara County, north of Los Angeles County, and this is the northern part of that county. I lived there for 6 months in a condo, and routinely I was in bed at 7:30 or 8 o'clock every night, and I was up without fail at 3 every day. I had staff in condos around me. We had a war room with about 40 computers and 4,000 binders of documents, and we had staff that would work all night to update my witness books. When I try a case, I'd like a notebook or notebooks on every witness. I'd like every document in chronological order that refers to that witness. I don't care whether the document's a newspaper article, a police report, a statement, a declaration. I don't care what it is. And the prosecution kept giving us documents late, and my staff would try to update my witness books because we would know who was going to testify the next day if I were cross-examining. So they had a key to my condo, and they would be dropping updated witness books on my stairwell. It was a duplex all through the night. So I would get up at 3 o'clock, put my bathrobe on, make a pot of coffee, get something to eat, and then look down my stairwell and see notebooks, on all these stairs. And I would go down and pick them up and start preparing for the day. And I just did not want to be seen in a restaurant or a bar or a hotel lobby or any place where the media could try to, put me in a compromising position. And I live like a monk. I live like a hermit.